着同样 logo 的 T 恤，亲切的笑容与互动，这是得胜者教育协会难得的北中南大集合，一起为协会庆生。已经在国中校园走过将近20年的得胜者课程，带着帮助引导青少年的重大使命，透过各种辅导教材，陪伴青少年走过叛逆因子旺盛的时光。金发碧眼的荣司提反牧师 Stephen Long 是得胜者的创办人。当年他与太太 Vicky 一同踏上台湾的土地，在语言不通与资源缺乏的状态下，竟然就埋头展开这个庞大的计划，将他们的热情与爱毫无保留地浇灌在台湾的土地上。
你好，我是金玉，欢迎收看真情部落格。其实一直以来，很多父母亲感到头痛的就是孩子的叛逆期。对，在这个时候呢，好像他们的脾气会有点阴晴不定啊，然后让父母亲也捉摸不定的，搞不清楚他们在想些什么。但是如果在这个时候呢，有一个课程让他们能够探索自己的年纪，然后找到自己的定位，而不至于迷失方向的话，那该有多好呢？其实台湾真的有这样的一个 program， 有这样的一个课程，叫做得胜者，而且呢，已经超过20年了。在这个中间呢，有非常多的青少年获得了很大的益处。而今天他们的创办人 Steve Long 就来到了真情部落格，我们要听听他的故事，还有呢，就是得胜的秘诀。Welcome to Taiwan, Pastor Steve.
Thank you so much.
The Champions Education Program has been in Taiwan for more than 20 years, right?
Yes.
But it is said that in the beginning, you did not choose education as your profession.
No, I was in the aircraft industry. I was an engineer and a pilot. When I flew my first plane, I was almost 15. And then when I was 16, I started flying again.
So your parents allow you to take up the challenge at such a young age?
Yeah, they did. It was better than driving a car 120 miles an hour.
What a unique family. So it sounds like you grew up in a very special family.
Yeah, I did. Very, very good. We had a loving family. My father was a businessman, and my mom helped him at business, but she also really took care of my brother and myself. There was only 2 of us, and he's 1 year older than I am.
Were you brought up in a Christian family?
I was brought up in a Christian family that went to church every Sunday, yes, but I did not actually believe until I was older. Even though I went to church every Sunday and was baptized, I still would not consider myself a Christian back then because I had no relationship with Jesus.
So as a young boy, how did you think about faith?
Would you like a nice story or the truth?
Of course, the truth.
As a young high school boy, I would go to church every Sunday because I liked several of the girls. But it had nothing to do with my faith. It had everything to do with the girls.
Afterwards, you became a pilot.
Yes.
And this is a job many people would envy or aspire to. Did you love this job?
I still love airplanes to this day. Whenever I fly, even coming to Taiwan or going back to the United States, I go to the airport 3 or 4 hours early just so I can hang around with pilots and airplanes. And every time I get on a plane, I tell them I have my commercial instrument rating and I can fly if they need me. You know, so they thank me, but thank God I've never had to use it.
There were times when you had moments of life and death, huh?
Yeah, when I was learning to fly. And when you're learning to fly an airplane, you have to be able to get it out of problems. Like if the airplane quits flying, which is called stall. And what happens is when you pull the nose of an airplane up, if you get it up too high, it'll buck a little bit, and then you have a warning that comes on, and that's called a stall warning. And at that point, it'll fall over and it'll quit flying. And you have to know exactly what to do to make it fly again. And so I've read all the books and I was practicing. So I was going into stalls and then coming out of them and going back up to about 6,000 feet, going into stalls, coming out of them. And I was right on the stall edge and the horn was going off, and a DC-10, a large jetliner, flew over the top of my small airplane, and the wind from it flipped me upside down and put me in a flat tailspin. Now, when you're right side up and stalled, it would be almost impossible to get out of a tailspin. But when you're upside down, the books don't say what to do. And so I was thinking, everything I'd studied, everything I'd read, oh my gosh, I'm gonna die. And so I was watching the water, and then the air, and then the water, and then the air, and every revolution I was dropping 500 feet.
Oh my goodness.
You know, in the old World War II movies, you hear this plane going down and it goes, that's exactly what it sounds like.
And then boom.
And at the bottom you have this big bang. And at 1,000 feet above the water, I took my feet off the pedals, I took my hands off, and I shut my eyes, and I said, here I come, God. And when I opened my eyes up, I was 500 feet off the water and flying level and not in a tailspin. And I thought, oh, I missed seeing an angel because I had my eyes shut. Something turned the plane right side up and made it fly right. And that's impossible, by the way. As any pilot will tell you, that's totally impossible to get out of an upside-down flat tailspin.
Was this the reason for you to go back to the church after leaving for so long?
No, actually, one of the guys I worked with in the aircraft industry told me about Jesus. And I said, go to hell. And he said, I can't. Because he said, I've given my life to Jesus and he won't send me there. And I thought, boy, that's an unusual answer. And he gave me the card to his church and he said, can I pray for you? And so I said, sure, you can pray for me. So he prayed for me. And that was a weekend that as a aircraft engineer also, I was working on a prototype engine and I forgot to put oil in it.
Oh. Because
I was high. Okay. And I completely forgot to put oil in this engine. And a jet engine's worth a lot of money. Even back then, it was worth a lot of money. And so I was sitting at my test lab, and the console is here with all these gauges and everything, and I was watching and I was running the jet engine, and we had a 17-inch thick piece of glass so we could watch the engine too. And so I put it all the way up to full power, and then all of a sudden it goes, and it looked just like 1010. It just looked like fireworks going off. I thought, wow, it's so pretty. This is because I was high. Wow, so pretty, you know. And then I thought, oh my gosh, it just blew up. And so I shut everything down, no fire, thank God. I went in there and I put everything into a big box because there was only pieces of the jet engine left. And then I wrote the engineering report that I gave plenty of oil. So I lied to save my job. So that was Friday night at midnight. Saturday, I felt so bad about lying. But Sunday came, and I thought, I'm going to go visit this guy's church. So I went to his church, and he was sitting there, and he had a seat saved for me. And when I walked in the door, he waved at me, said, come and sit down. And when I got there, he said, God told me you're coming. And I said, right. Sure. I'd never heard that God speaks to people, okay? And this guy is telling me that God told him to save me a seat. And so I thought, oh my. But that night was the night that I came completely to Jesus. There was a visiting preacher at that church that night, and it was a woman, and she was in her late 70s, and no glasses on like I have. And she took her Bible and she said, you know, God healed my eyes just 2 weeks ago. I can read now. She's reading the Bible and she said, God healed me. And I thought, this is one of those kind of churches, you know, where people do strange things. And then I thought, either she's telling the truth or she's lying, you know. But she could read. And I thought, okay, she might be telling the truth. And so she took her hand and she says, children, don't you know we go from victory to victory to victory in Christ Jesus? And I looked at God for the first time in my life. And I said, thanks for all my victories. I'm doing drugs every night. I'm drinking every night. I just lied to save my job. Thanks for all these victories. And I was real sarcastic with God. And when I came back to what she was saying, she was pointing right at me. And she said, there's a young man sitting right there, and you just lied to save your job, and you better get up here tonight. And I went, that's me. She knows me. She didn't know me. I've never seen her before in my life, nor did she know I lied to save my job, but God told her. And the Bible calls that a word of knowledge. And so I literally bolted and ran forward, laid on my face in front of the altar. And she was now finished preaching, so she kept teaching, and I was just laying there. And I remember saying something like, Lord, I am so sorry. And all of a sudden, from my head to my feet, I felt clean.
Wow.
Now, the reason I use the word clean is because I was a liar, a drunk, on drugs, and still able to fly airplanes.
Wow.
And so it was a miracle that I didn't kill somebody or was not dead. But I felt dirty. And then when I was on the floor before the Lord, all of a sudden it was like, I'm clean. And then I found myself holding my hands out like this. And she said, son, what are you doing? And because I was raised in the church, I said, I need the power of the Holy Spirit so I can live for God.
Wow.
That was 40 years ago, and I've been living for Him ever since.
Wow.
100% of my life is dedicated to God.
What a miracle.
Yeah. Amen.
Wow. Afterwards,
been
how
good.
did you manage to quit smoking and other bad habits?
Let me first tell you about what happened Monday morning. The Holy Spirit is the Spirit of truth. And so I went to my boss, who I worked for, when I was running the jet engine.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And I went in there and I was prepared to tell him the reason the engine blew up is because
the true reason.
I didn't put any oil in it. So I said, Bob, about the jet engine. He said, yes. And he threw me the paper, the engineering report. So I read it. It said nothing about the oil. And I thought, wow. So I turned it back over and I read it again. And I thought, wait a minute, because God gave me this comfort last night, and I felt like the Lord spoke to me and said, don't worry about your job. So I go to work to tell the truth, and all of a sudden, there's nothing about oil. And I just said, what about the oil, Bob? And he said, they said it had plenty of oil in it. Now, I know it had no oil in it because I was the only engineer working on that project, and I did not put oil in it. And it had plenty of oil in it when they checked it. And I thought,
weird.
God did a miracle. And I shouted. I went, praise God, Bob. And he looked at me, he goes, what? Because he heard me use God's name in every way but praise. So what happened with the cigarettes is I kept smoking them for about 3 more months. And this one day I was doing my laundry at a laundromat, and a young lady came in, and I was going to tell her about Jesus because I was so excited about my new faith. So I started to talk with her, and I pulled out a cigarette, and she said, uh-huh. And I said, what do you mean, uh-huh? She said, next thing you're going to tell me is somewhere in the Bible it's okay for you to smoke a cigarette. So that day I took the cigarette and I just broke it. And I said, Lord, I don't want to be controlled by this anymore. And I've not wanted a cigarette since then. I've had no desire.
So
I can sit with people.
Smoking at that moment?
Yeah.
Wow.
I can sit with people who are smoking. It doesn't bother me. I don't judge them. But I have no desire to have any of that anymore.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's exciting.
Pilot is a very great job. And why did you make your decision to quit the job and be a pastor?
Well, I was loving the aircraft industry, and my wife and I had just moved to the Los Angeles area from Phoenix, Arizona. My new wife and I, 36 years ago. we visited this one church, and there was a pastor that was from Switzerland there. And he had a Bible school in Switzerland. And so, as he was speaking, I started tearing, and then I was crying. And I'm not given to tears like that. And when my wife looked at me, she started crying. And so afterwards, we went up to talk with this pastor, because he was saying nothing emotional, and yet we were both crying. And so when we walked up to talk with him, he said that he had been praying that God would touch one couple every church that he spoke at to come into this group, and it's called Youth with a Mission. And YWAM, though they're not well known, are the largest missionary group in the world. And so we felt like that was a call. And I did not want to leave the airplane industry. I did not want to leave piloting. And so there's skid marks from my shoes all the way into ministry, because I really loved what I was doing. And finally, it was like the Lord was speaking to my heart. And I said, Lord, you know I love airplanes. And it was like he said, do you love me more? And I said, that's not fair. and his kingdom is not fair. It's proper and just, but it's not fair. It's not a democracy. God's kingdom is a dictatorship, and he's a loving, wonderful dictator, but he's the boss, we're not. And so I was obedient to him, even though I didn't want to be. I went into the office and I slammed the door, and I took my Bible and I shook it at God. By the way, don't ever do that. Okay, don't do that. Don't do that. But I shook my Bible at God and I said, God! And I was going to say I quit, and very clear, I heard a voice that was outside of my own mind.
Since 1991. My other 2 passports are extra pages and they're completely full.
密密麻麻的护照反映着荣司提反牧师这10多年来往来世界各地的记录。从飞行员到宣教士，他依旧是个空中飞人，放下高薪又热爱的工作，常年在外辛苦奔波传福音。荣牧师虽然经过挣扎，但从没有回头。荣牧师起初与太太 Vicky 来到台湾，面对吸毒、援交等等许多青少年的问题，使得他们决心为台湾尽一分心力，开始筹划得胜者。
我们去分享得胜者这个怎么来做的这个方式，在某一个地方，我们是戒烟戒酒的一个公益的活动，可是在那个场合是烟酒都有。而且我们还遭受到一个老师的生气，因为我们放了这个得胜影片，声音比较大一点。那我也不是太有修养，我也很生气。可是那时候 Vicky 还讲一句话，他说非得只要有一个老师注意在看我们所分享的，我们就是要做。原来他们所看的是一个非常正面的。
有时候我们就是好像你看，就是经费不足，好，他们自己也更没有钱，对不对？可是呢，当他们领受一个使命的时候，领受上帝给他们那个意向的时候，我觉得他们就是全力以赴，不是先算说有没有，就是冲啊。
后来 Vicky 师母生病，她胆结石，她回去就开刀，那个刀是开得非常非常的久，然后之后她的脚又。因为它是人工的关节，然后又人工的脊椎，所以他的身体的骨质非常的不好，他都没有任何的就是抱怨。而且当一个施工越来越大的时候，就越来越多的问题。可是在这当中，然后他又要带2个孩子，然后他语言又不通，他讲的每一句话都要透过翻译。但是我看到他的爱跟忍耐。
Pastor Steve, being a pastor and a missionary must be very hard in the beginning, especially financially, right?
Yeah. God supplies all of our needs, but He doesn't supply our greeds. He doesn't supply the extra stuff we want. He supplies what we need. Many years ago, we were very broke, and we were in Israel. I had 10 U.S. cents left, and that's all I had in the world. And we were in Israel staying with friends, and I had an airline ticket to get me back to Amsterdam, Holland, but we were on our way to the airport at Tel Aviv, and this young lady said, "Do you need money?" And I said, "No, we have our ticket. We're fine." And we were going to fast, no food. And so as we were getting close to the airport, she said, "I don't understand this, but God keeps telling me I have to give you $20 US each." And I said, "Okay, we'll receive it." When we got to the ticket counter with our tickets, there was a tax of $20 each to get out of the country. We couldn't have left without her being obedient.
Oh.
And so that's the way we lived for many years. And then even when we first came to Taiwan, that's the way we lived. Just God would provide.
Did your wife ever tell you that she cannot go on living like that?
No.
No?
She was excited. Her parents were concerned. We were so naive. We just believed God would just take care of us all the time, which He did and still does. And it was so exciting because, like, her parents finally, just a few years ago, they said, "You know, we have been so worried about you for so long, but God takes care of you." And so
Wow.
it's exciting.
Her heart is so childlike.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you? Did you ever complain to God?
Many times. I was pastoring a church in California. Probably once a day for 3 months, I would go into my office and close the door and say, "God, I quit." I would do that over and over and over again. And my wife would hear me sometimes, and she'd say, "Steve, you probably shouldn't do that." You know, she's the spiritual one. And so she said, "Steve, you better quit that. God's not going to be too happy if you keep that up." And so this one day, one of the young men who'd been on heroin decided to go back to the street. And he didn't want anything to do with me, and he came in and just yelled at me and really broke my heart. And so I went into the office and I slammed the door and I took my Bible and I shook it at God. By the way, don't ever do that. Okay, don't do that. Don't do that. But I shook my Bible at God and I said, "God," and I was going to say I quit, and very clear, I heard a voice that was outside of my own mind. And He said, "Steve, if you dare say that one more time, that's it for the rest of your life." And I thought, you know, that doesn't sound good. And so I was on my face going, "Oh, Jesus, I am so sorry." The next day I was having my Bible time, and I was thinking, you know, maybe that wasn't really God. Maybe it was just in my mind. I was making this up. Surely God doesn't care if I quit. And that day I got a book in the mail. It was from a television evangelist named Oral Roberts. And Oral Roberts sent me a book in the mail, and it had a letter that said, "Pastor, don't send me any money. I want you to read my new book. God told me you need it." And when I looked at the title was "Winners Never Quit, Quitters Never Win." And I thought, oh, okay, it really was God. Yes. So I was down on my face again. "Oh, God, I'm sorry." And so I've learned, I guess because I'm practical as a pilot and as an engineer, I've learned to walk with God in a very practical way. So I never say I quit. He can move me anywhere He wants to, but I won't quit. I'll do everything I can to do everything I can.
And you came to Taiwan and started your minister through the Champions Education Program. But this is the program originally formed and designed in Taiwan, right?
Yep.
Why did you choose to work with this program?
My wife.
Oh.
My wife is actually, you know, they call me the founding director, but she's actually the #1 founding director. She was actually fasting for 40 days with no food. And during that fast, she and another friend named Bao Tzu were praying together, and they put the map of Taiwan down, and they started crying. And when they were crying, when they opened their eyes, the whole map of Taiwan was covered with their tears. And then my wife started writing as fast as she could. God was speaking to her about what champions would look like. And so she, being an educator, really had a heart for education, but also had a heart for the young people here. And you know, what convinced us to do it more than anything else, we were in another city in Taiwan, in central Taiwan, big city in central Taiwan, and we were sitting in front of a barber shop. And the barber shop was like 2 blocks long with probably hundreds of rooms. I've never gone into one of them, but it didn't look like they were cutting hair. And so I was wondering why these young girls were going in there and coming out with money. And one of the headmasters of one of the junior high schools told me personally, he said if they keep their junior high card, they can make more money. And so as we watched that and KTVs that are not really good KTVs, we sat in our car and wept for the children of Taiwan because God was not happy. And they were having their purity robbed by somebody that wanted to make money from them. And so as a result of that, we started thinking, how can we do something to help the young people stay away from that lifestyle? There was also a problem back then with methamphetamines. And meth, we had in the 1960s in the United States, we called it speed, and we used it to get high. We didn't use it to study all night. Kids here used it so they could study harder, but it's the same drug, and it'll get you just as hooked whether you're trying to study hard or not. And so a lot of the young people at that point had taken some wrong choices. And because of those wrong choices, their lifestyles were being grabbed by methamphetamines and gang membership and all kinds of things. So as a result of that and the prayer, we started Champions. We went back to the United States and we met some people in Hollywood who had developed a multimedia presentation called Champions. As they showed us this multimedia, we thought, this would be perfect for the kids in Taiwan. It had all the popular movie stars of that point, like Kevin Costner when he was a young man, in Robin Hood, and all these media people. And what the whole process of this 40-minute presentation was helping the young people know that they could make decisions to stay away from the bad lifestyles and to become a champion in their life. And so we spent all of our life savings and bought this program from Hollywood and brought it here not even knowing if it would work. And then we had to put the Chinese translation underneath, and we had 1,400 slides going, and then the center was a movie projector screen. And so we came and we started doing that program. And then we would have the young people fill out a card to say if they'd like to learn more about how to be a champion in their lifestyle. Our first school was Dada Middle School in Taichung. On about the 8th week of the class, Bao Chu was coming up as a volunteer from Tainan, and it was a miracle. Commissioner Chen from Jiaoyiting was sitting next to her on the train. And so she turned to him and she said, "Have you ever heard about Champions?" And of course he said, "No, because we were only in one school." Right. And so he said, "But it sounds like a very interesting program." And she said, "Oh, it's just wonderful." So she came into the headmaster's office, and we're sitting there having the little old man tea, you know, oolong cha. And we're all sitting there having our tea, and she comes bursting in the office. She said, "You won't believe it, I was just with Commissioner Chen." He was Commissioner of Education for the Jiao Ting. And so the headmaster was sitting there, and he said, "Chen and I were university roommates." And he got on the phone, and he's saying, "Chen?" And so I could understand Chen, but that's all I could understand. Well, Chen was still boo hao. And so Bao Tzu said, "He's telling Commissioner Chen that this is one of the best student orientations for young people that he's ever seen. It's one of the best curriculum. It helps him with problem solving. It's the best thing he's ever seen. Get this in all the schools." And so maybe 2 days later, we had a phone call from Commissioner Chen, and he was saying, "Can you come to our office?" And so 4 of us went to his office, and he said, "How much do you want?" And we said, "What do you mean, how much do we want?" And he said, "We want to buy your program." And we said, "Well, it's not for sale. It's like a franchise. We'll provide the people, you provide the money." and he agreed. And so for the first 5 years, Champions was totally sponsored by Jiao Ting.
What are the goals that you expect the program to achieve?
Probably the number one goal is for young people to be able to go through life and become a better person for society and for the culture, and to change the things that need change. There's several things in Taiwan that probably could use changing, and we're trying to work there as well.
Pastor Steve, since the Champions education program went so smoothly in Taiwan, so you and your wife had to travel a lot, flying back and forth between Taiwan and the States, right?
Yeah.
But somehow I heard that your wife Vicky's physical condition was not really suitable for traveling.
Just 2 days ago, I was trying to count up all the different times that she's had surgeries since I've known her, and that was 13 major surgeries, back and front, back, foot, back, different things. And so she is very gentle, soft-spoken, but very, very strong. And she just keeps going no matter what she feels like. And she's been a great example to me. You know, I hurt my finger. She literally walks in pain all the time and never. I've been married to her for 36 years, and I've never heard her complain. Even in the hospital, when they cut her open, put metal rods down her back, put her back together, she never complained about the pain once. Just amazing, amazing, powerful woman. And right now she's in the United States because she's preparing for another surgery on her right foot.
It must have been heartbreaking, right, for you to see her suffer.
Actually, every surgery I've had God take me through a point of giving her to death, because I have to choose, no matter what happens to her, I'll still walk with God. I'll still serve Him 110% of my life. And so it's been a very, very hard process. The first time was when we were just married about a year, and she got very, very deathly ill with a sugar blood disorder. It took me 2 or 3 days, because one of the leaders said, "Have you ever thought about the fact that she could die?" And I said, "No, God wouldn't do that." And then I started to think, well, she could die. And so I struggled it, because I said, "Lord, you've given her to me. Why would you take her from me?" And finally I got to the point where I said, "Lord, if she goes and she's with you, she's in better hands anyway." And so I'm okay with that. I'd still miss her, but she'd be so much better off with you. than me. And at that point, I got a release. And also, the next day, she got healed. She was completely, 100% healed through somebody's prayers. And so I've learned over the years just to continually give her to God.
Wow, how did she face all the pain?
I don't know. I haven't been there. I've been with her, but I haven't been in pain like that. She has a tremendous ability to use her mind to overcome.
Wow.
Just even the last year, her foot had a surgery 5 years ago, and the last year, the big toe started twisting and going underneath the other toes. And the doctor warned us that he said, when that happens, you need another surgery and then it'll fix your foot. And so it's been about the last year that it's been slowly going underneath. Now, if she walks, she's completely on top of that. And the pain is really, really severe. But she's never complained. She just keeps walking.
Wow. Wow, she's so courageous.
She's an amazing woman.
Right.
Yeah.
And also we want to know more about the twins. So you adopted a pair of twins in Taiwan, right? And before this adoption, you were not able to have children.
Before this adoption, we had well-meaning peoples. Many of them came up to us and said, I just had dreams of you having twins. And one of their name is John. And many people told us they saw us with twins. And then my wife needed a complete hysterectomy.
Oh.
And so we thought, well, all those well-meaning people were wrong, you know. And so we were not even thinking about adoption, actually. And yet, I won't go into the whole story, but God put it together so we could adopt these two boys.
Did God give you signs and give your wife signs that, you know, this pair of twins are given by me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The day that they were born, we had no idea, but I was at a Christian hospital here in Taiwan, and several of the doctors came up and said, would you like to adopt some children? And I said, why? And they said, well, we have several sick children that need to go to the United States to be worked on. And I said, well, number one, I don't have any insurance. And number two, I can't strap my wife with sick children. That would not be right. And so then that night, I called Vicki. She was in the States, and I was here with the team. And I said, Vicki, has God been telling you anything? And she said, yeah, we're supposed to adopt kids. And I thought, oh, no, because I thought it was that's going to be sick children. But our twins were born on that same day. And when I asked, I was holding one of them, and I said, by the way, what day were they born? And when she said it, I went, yeah, we'll adopt them. We knew it right then. Yeah. So, yeah, it was a love affair from first sight. They were really cute.
Have your sons ever asked about their parenthood?
They know they're adopted, but, you know, my wife put together a photo album of champions and of what we do, and then it has this big page that says, Then the Miracle, and when you turn it over, you see the twins when they were babies. And it's phenomenal because they grew up knowing that they were a miracle, and they've never once thought of us as anything except their parents. And the story that we were told probably is not true anyway. We have no idea where the parents are. And so in a lot of ways that makes it better. He said, I was in Champions when I was in junior high school. And I said, did it help you? You know, because I'm very practical. If it doesn't help, let's change what we're doing. And he said, Steve, or actually he said, Dr. Steve, he said, this is the most important class of all my education.
No more beautiful kids than Taiwanese kids. To 全世界没有任何的小孩比台湾小孩更漂亮。
I don't know what happens when you grow up, but when you're little,
经过荣司提反牧师夫妇以及无数同工与志工的努力，得胜者现在已经是台湾许多国中都会推行的课程。受过训练的志工遍及台湾各地，而他们透过这些课程，不是以严肃的老师形象，而是亲切的哥哥姐姐们，温暖地陪伴着学生成长。
And this beautiful young lady is Hong Cha-Li. Cha-Li was with us when we started Champions. Actually, before we were Champions, we were called Together for Taiwan, and she was our first volunteer.
而对于这些志工，荣牧师一家人也成为他们的榜样与支持者。无论是付出时间精力的无私奉献，到病痛中仍然乐观以对的态度，也深深影响撼动着他们继续为台湾青少年耕耘的心。
我记得我们在台中第一个学校，因为学校开始都不会给我们好学生，就把所有的坏的孩子集中在一班，那个叫做牛头班。我们没有办法上课，我们发动14个义工去上那一班，好，上那个10几个孩子就14个义工，然后 Vicky 师母就是这样从头上到尾，到结束的时候，那一班孩子送了很多的花，然后那孩子非常的感动。我想那些孩子开始感受到说，我是一个有价值的人，因为有人真心爱我。
我们在台南有一位老人家，70多岁，他为了做得胜者义工，他去李小兵头去学吉他。你只要看他戴的那个耳机，弹吉他那种样子，那些学生、高中生就为他疯狂，要叫他老爹老爹。所以这个是一个让台湾所有一些关心青少年的一些的朋友，能够一起来用无私的爱去关心孩子的一个机会。
我一直看见是他们的爱一直愿意给出去，一直愿意给，不管是我们整个协会的策略，你看到是我们不是说把孩子们带到这里来可是我们去到学校，然后教材免费提供给孩子，还有他们自己看到一些需要的时候，他们愿意去服侍，他们愿意在金钱上的支持或是祷告的支持，所以我觉得这种愿意给。这些我相信，若不是信仰上一个很大的一个坚定，其实不是从基督而来的爱是很难做出来的。
Champions Education Program has been taking its root in Taiwan for 20 years and has established truly good reputation. How do you arrange your courses to make it work so well?
It's a lot easier to provide preventive education than it is to try to help somebody after they're already messed up. And so we started Champions with that in mind. If we can help young people make proper decisions and have good problem-solving skills, they will not turn to drugs and alcohol abuse and gang membership. That was the whole emphasis behind Champions. And so we did a curriculum that was their needs-based. So needs-based curriculum is far better than trying to figure out how to teach a textbook. What you do is you're interacting with the students and you're creating the curriculum as you go for their needs. And so it was problem-solving skills, life skills, emotions management and anger management, relationships, gender education, many different things add in to what the champion is. If you're going to be a champion in your lifestyle, whether it's a champion television video person or if it's a champion taxi driver, there are certain things that will make you the best you can be. And if you're going to be a champion, you don't have time for the negative stuff. It's going to have to be positive. And so that's the whole emphasis underlying Champions.
This is a program on my hands. Basically, you deal with junior high students.
We start with elementary and junior high, yes.
How did you manage to understand and reach children of this age?
Probably because we were looking at their needs and trying to develop the curriculum around their needs. And then It's not just teaching a curriculum. We have 6,000 volunteers that go into the classroom and love the kids. And those 6,000 volunteers are the backbone of Champions. Without them, Champions doesn't work. But because of their love and concern, I've brought many teams of people here, professionals, and they look at the volunteer system and they say, how do you get these people to do this? And the answer is, we don't. They love the children. Taiwan's people love their kids amazingly.
Right.
And by the way, as a foreigner, I've never seen any place as hospitable to foreigners as Taiwan.
And we believe many students have been changed after joining this program. Would you like to share a few stories of them with us?
One of the young men came up to me as I was teaching in the university at Donghua. And he said, I was in Champions when I was in junior high school. And I said, did it help you? You know, because I'm very practical. If it doesn't help, let's change what we're doing. And he said, Steve, or actually he said, Dr. Steve, he said, this is the most important class of all my education. And I said, why? And he said, because every other class depended on the life skills and the character I learned in Champions. And I thought, wow. I said, may I video you saying that? And he said, oh yeah. So the next week I videoed him. I can think of many other, but I think possibly some of the most dramatic ones were young people who had contemplated doing suicide seriously. I mean, they were talking about it. And the Champions volunteer was able to walk them through that and think through things with them, and also get them to good counselors who, there's many young people who did not commit suicide because of Champions.
At the end of the program, what would you like to share with our audience, especially for the young people?
Right now, as you look at the newspaper and watch the news, you might get depressed. But I tell you the truth, the future is bright for you young people. There is a huge amount of things you can do as you become a champion to change your cultural fabric here, to change the way that you do things here, and to make this a better place to live. And so our prayers for you is that you become the future of this island as well as the world. You know, you are the future, and if you embrace positive and right choices, you can change the future to be better. You can change the future to be a lot better. And so we want you to be part of that bright future of Taiwan, as well as the bright future of our world.
其实每个人都想成为得胜者，但是要怎么得胜呢？如果说我们在我们的生活当中四处乱走，到处游晃，没有定向，没有目标，哇，那你可能就浪费了很多的时间和很多的力气了。其实得胜是有秘诀的，其实就像刚刚荣牧师他自己所说的，他也去追寻上帝啊，我要在什么地方可以得胜呢？所以他去问上帝，我能在我的生活当中改变些什么？你希望我为你完成些什么？你希望我在什么事上，针对什么样的人，好好的去努力我的方向？结果上帝带着荣牧师走进了得胜者，而且这20多年来可以说是结实累累。上帝好像透过他，然后流出了祝福的管道，给了很多很多年轻的孩子撒下种子。我们也希望这群孩子未来能够成长茁壮，成为大树，而变成别人的祝福。Thank you, Pastor Steve. Thank you for coming. Thank you.
好，我是你们的老朋友孙越。你看看，一个喜欢飞行的人，最后神呼召他，他不愿意，可是他接受了。我也知道有些人跟我讲：“哎呀，孙叔啊，等我将来退休了，我为上帝做事，我为主耶稣做事，我。”其实你不一定非要退休，你如果真有心，你再放在祷告里。看看主怎么样用你。我们看到荣牧师的改变， 他的改变也帮助了在台湾的这么多国中生，使他们能够改变。这些国中生有的已经现在在社会上高就了，有的学位很高，有的仍然在读高中，但是我们真的看见了他用心的带这些孩子，让他们成为一个正常的孩子，让他们快乐的在享受他们的青少年生活，不是严加管教，而是用一种同理心去关心他，去爱他，去接纳他。这些孩子真的就改变了，这就是得胜者。你现在知道了，我们看见了幕后，我们这位荣老师、荣牧师、师母他们2位的辛苦。我们一起做一个祷告，看看你自己有没有被神呼召。好，亲爱的主耶稣，谢谢你，我看见了主你自己的工人，我们的荣牧师、师母，他们献身在这个教育中间，帮助了我们台湾。他更希望将来在世界各地都能够建立得胜者，让许多的青少年都有正常的、快乐的一个生活。谢谢主耶稣，我为电视机前面的朋友祷告。也许他希望为主做事，也许他希望为社会做些事，不一定非要等到年老，不一定非要等到把钱攒多了。主，你呼召他，让他自己有感动，他愿意献身，这就是一个最好的事情，一个开始。不管是任何时间，都是一个美好的开始。我恭敬地为电视机前面的朋友们祷告，奉主耶稣基督的名，阿门。亲爱的朋友，记住了，做事就要得时，抓住时间，好好的为上帝做工，你心里会无比的快乐。